One of the terrorists is trying to tell us something. It's me! It's me! Looks like he's saying...
No FOMO, no FOMO.
Smart-ass mother...
Broadcasting from Brisbane, Australia, this is The FOMO Show.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
And this is a podcast where you'll hear about blockchain, cryptocurrency, and future tech in relatively plain English. We'll help you stay across the crypto world so you don't get the fear of missing out.
Yeah, you can find us at FOMO.show or by searching for The FOMO Show on your platform of choice.
So this episode, we're going to be talking about Neo, which is a competitor to Ethereum, and I feel like it hasn't been covered enough, and so we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into that and see what all the fuss is about.
Awesome. And we're going to be covering just a little bit of news, just going through a couple of headlines in the fortnight that was.
So, mate, what have you been up to this last couple of weeks?
Mate, I've been very distracted. I've had some social situations happening. I'm not going to lie, last time we recorded, I was very stressed out. But now I'm actually a bit calmer. I quit smoking. That was something that I also did.
Yeah, mate, you quit smoking, which is awesome.
I spent 10 years, I really hope my mom's not listening, spent 10 years smoking and then I quit.
And you're doing really well. Like you're down to what, 2 pieces of gum a day?
Yeah, so I'm on that like nicotine sort of some kind of quitting gum.
How's
stuff.
that been for anyone that smokes out there? Like, what would you say to a fellow?
Now, if you
smoker?
don't smoke, it's kind of a little trickier to understand. But this is actually a physiological addiction. Like you can find if you smoke cigarettes, you'll find that you run out of cigarettes, and then you just find yourself walking. You find yourself walking to the newsagents without even realising, and then you realise halfway there, like, oh my goodness, my addiction has made me leave my house, get my card, get my keys, and go and get cigarettes. And it's just what happens to you. So that whole... The first 5 days, you can't stop thinking about cigarettes. There's no way around that.
Wow.
It's pretty hard.
Wow. And you did struggle that first bit, I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, I struggled.
But mate, you're on the other end now, and things are getting a lot better. Yeah.
Hey, what have you been up to?
Mate, I've just been I've actually been preparing for a seminar that I'm doing in May. So the PowerPoint slides are due tomorrow, and they will hopefully be done tomorrow. We're getting pretty close, but yeah, that's been good. Just preparing to talk to a lot of people from a lot of different fields about blockchain and what smart contracts can do, which is pretty exciting. And other than that, yeah, I've just been keeping busy. It's getting to the business end of the NHL season, so I'm just nervously like checking scores all the time because there's about 5 teams vying for 4 playoff spots.
NHL, National Hockey League?
Right. Yeah. So there's like 5 teams and there's 4 playoff spots that are kind of open for these 5 teams. Okay. And my team's one of those 5 teams. So just every time someone loses and we win a game, we go up a bit. But then if we lose a game, we're like right back.
So you're on 10 Turks for the next...
Oh, mate, the next 2 weeks. And then the playoffs start and it gets even worse because then you've got like 7-game series where if you don't win 4 of those 7 games, you're eliminated and that's it. So
it's a good lesson for any crypto investors out there. Don't get emotionally invested in one team, look, because otherwise you're going to be as stressed as Matt here is. I'm just messing with you. Oh, mate. No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been good, mate. But yeah, keen to get talking about some interesting stuff.
Mate, first things first, is this investment advice?
No, this is not investment advice, and it's also not legal advice. Nothing in this show should be taken as any kind of professional advice. This show is essentially 2 blokes, you and me, getting together, talking about things we're really interested in, and yes, we do know something about the subjects, but the purpose of this podcast isn't to give advice, especially in relation to cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
So new cryptocurrencies are popping up every single day, and we're not going to tell you to buy anything at all. And nothing we say should be construed as advice to buy anything at all.
For full disclosure, we're both personally invested in different cryptocurrencies. Some of them we talk about on this show. Now, we usually mention it when we actually own something, but even then, if we talk about a project, it doesn't mean you should buy it.
Yeah, so do your research, never invest more than you can afford to lose, and most importantly, avoid the fear of missing out.
Nice. If you're new around here and you're new to cryptocurrency in general, check out our Blockchain Basics series. It starts from episode 2 and it continues to episode 8. You can find all the timestamps in the show notes, so you can jump right to that section. But yeah, episode 2 to episode 8, and it'll give you a grounding in the fundamentals and let you understand what on earth we're actually talking about half the time.
Yeah, we use a lot of terms that it's not necessarily apparent what they are when we first use them, and we explain a lot of them in our Blockchain Basics series. So if you're feeling confused, if we're talking about things you don't really know what the meaning is, jump back, have a listen to them. Yeah. We cover all this stuff and try and give you a good grounding in some of the fundamentals, so you can essentially just translate in your head what we're actually saying.
Some good examples and stuff. Yeah. Episode 15.
Episode 15. Mate, who would have thought we would have made it to episode 15?
Mate, I didn't. I certainly didn't.
We've been talking in these microphones for 14 episodes, going on 15, and I feel like we haven't really talked much about ourselves.
That's a fair point, you know. When you're not thinking about blockchain, what are you doing?
Oh, crap, man. I wasn't ready for personal
questions. You see, if I could ask you a question about smart contracts, you'd be like, here's an answer. What sort of topics do you sort of read up on? What little random blogs and things do you follow that just random interest?
So when I wake up, the first thing in the morning I do is I check Reddit, and I've got Reddit on my phone. Yeah. And the first thing I look at is the Anaheim Ducks subreddit, because I'm a mad ice hockey fan.
Oh, right. Ice hockey
fan. So for those of you guys that don't know, the Anaheim Ducks is a ice hockey team in America, and they were originally the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. So Disney bought a franchise in 92, I think. And then I saw the Mighty Ducks movies when I was really young. And the moment I found out there was an actual Mighty Ducks hockey team, I was like, that's my team.
No way.
And so I've been following them for well over a decade now. And yeah, mate, that's one of my big passions. And in my recent trip to the land of freedom, I got to call in and watch a couple of Ducks games, and I was just...
where is Anaheim?
So it's in LA, but it's...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's you've kind of got the main LA area, and then you've got... I think it's further down the coast. You've got Anaheim, which is a separate... it's about 3 or 4 million people in the Orange County region. So it's Orange County.
Yeah, okay.
And they're essentially the Orange County team. So yeah, that's one thing I'm just a big
Ducks.
Sports fan in general, actually, mate. Cricket, rugby union, Aussie rules.
Nice. I still don't understand what's going on with Aussie rules. Everyone's
it's kind of like aerial
Everyone's
ping-pong.
like, are you watching the footy? But footy here means rugby, Australian rules football, and
or rugby league.
Yeah. It's just very confusing.
Yeah, we got a lot of sports. We got a lot of sports that not many other people
Everyone
play.
in this country is sporty, you know. It's not even funny. You're either really, really fit or you're just obese in this country. There's no in between. It's so weird.
Breaking news. Over the last couple of days, we've had a big scandal here with our cricket team. So they're in South Africa at the moment, and they've essentially been caught cheating, which is a huge deal for Australia, because we're really competitive, but we draw the line at cheating. There's never been any of that's gone on in Australian sport that's been anywhere near approved of. And I didn't realise how into how much pride we hold our cricket team with until this thing happened. And all of a sudden, everyone was just calling for the captain to be sacked, the vice captain to be sacked, the coach to be sacked, and it was instant. And I was the same. And yeah, I don't know, Australia, if you're the Australian cricket team captain, you've got the Prime Minister, who's the leader of the government here in Australia, and then you've got the Australian cricket captain, who's kind of just underneath that. And they're basically loved by everyone in Australia. So yeah, it's a big deal. Australians just love their sport.
So what kind of things do you read? What do you like reading?
Mate, science fiction, fantasy, basically anything that's really creative and different. Right. That's what I really like, and I think that's part of what drew me to the blockchain is the whole science fiction element to it. It's kind of future tech, and that's why I love reading up about all this stuff and talking about it. Mate, yeah. How about you though? Let's talk about you. What gets you up in the morning?
Do you know what? It's a mixture between business and politics. Like that's literally what I'm thinking about the whole time. So I used to be addicted to reading news. So back at uni, I would spend 5+ hours a day because I never turned up to lectures. I spent 5+ hours a day just reading news.
Yeah.
And then that's when I got into Feedly, which is a tool we mentioned a few episodes back, which is basically where you can subscribe to all those news feeds in one place.
Yeah.
So I had 600 odd sources. Even today, I've got 600 odd sources that all go into my news feed, and I was just reading news. So must have spent 3 years at uni solidly, just spending 5 hours a day, more on weekends, just reading news, foreign policy especially, geopolitics, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And outside of that, it was I am only reading about marketing and growing businesses. Yeah. Because for some people, it's like, for me, marketing seems really easy. It's just selling a business, and it's. But for a lot of people, that's actually it's something that's much more tricky for business owners. Yeah. Whereas for me, helping grow businesses is something I just do. So I just love, like, if I'm not reading about politics and geostrategic stuff that's geopolitical maneuvers and all that stuff that's going on. Yeah. I'll be reading about marketing, how to grow businesses, how to make things better, how to improve experiences, and that's literally that's basically what I do. And then I, like, as well as working in marketing, I consult on the side for a couple of businesses. Yep. I just get a cut of sales and I help grow their businesses. So yeah, that's basically all I do. And then it's this podcast. Yep. And that's I guess you'd say that would be me.
I'll walk past and I'll see all these news feeds that you've got, and you're just consuming all this information, but it's awesome hearing you talk about marketing though, because you do say that you're really passionate about it, and I see that whenever I start to get you talking on what you're doing for someone else and how you're building that business, like your face just lights up. What really gets you excited about that though?
Do you know what? I think the whole thing is just, I've always, like, when I was younger, I started off doing design. Yeah. That's why when I was a kid, I started just forging things that I liked. So I found a cool design, cool ad, and I just tried to mimic it. It was just mimicry. That's all it was. Yeah. But then I started to get into, like, typography and fonts. Yeah. And it sounds really stupid, but then when the design is amazing, when you've got a brand, I love designing logos and just creating those brands because it's amazing how much feeling can come out from just some fonts and some letter spacing and some colors. Yeah. Like and I just love that whole idea is you can just change the font and you could type some words out, set the fonts and the colors, and suddenly it could be an Italian patisserie, or you could set it as, some futuristic font and be like some sort of science consulting group. There's so much that you can do with that. And I love helping create companies. So that's one of the things that I do with my clients. Yeah. While I'm actually doing marketing, I'm actually rebranding them. I'm getting their color scheme. I'm making them look like $1 million. Yeah. Because when you want to buy off a company, sometimes people, like, a lot of people say they don't care about the design, but it's subconsciously, if it looks cool I'm more likely to buy from it. Yeah. And I love creating amazing websites. The FOMO show has work to go, don't worry. But it looks good though. I just love creating stuff that just feels great. Yeah. And there's something about that feeling, I can't even put a finger on it, but it's just an amalgamation of all of that. Yeah. So yeah, that's what totally gets me excited and about all that stuff, and I don't even spend enough time on it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, mate, because you get so caught up in, I feel like for me anyway, the blockchain, the tech, doing things within that sphere has taken up so much of my life that used to be, focus on other things. I do a fair bit of writing in my spare time. I was writing more fiction-based stuff. Right. Now I'm writing more for, between the podcasts and the blog that I'm doing.
So more about what's this blog that you're doing? You're starting something up here, right?
Yeah, mate. Essentially, it's a blog centered around blockchain, smart contracts, and the goal of it is to help businesses prepare themselves for what's coming. So the steps ahead in blockchain, the steps ahead in smart contracts, the businesses that are going to really thrive in the next 5 to 10 years, similar to where we were with the internet 20 years ago, even 25 years ago, are the ones that start using this technology in a meaningful way and start looking at their workflow and saying, how can I improve this with the technology that's coming? And that's different for every business. You know, some businesses aren't going to benefit from blockchain, but there's a whole lot of businesses, a whole lot of government entities, basically everything in our society. There are places where blockchain is going to make a lot more sense than just your traditional web architecture. So that's what gets me really passionate, is looking at where a business is at and where they can start plugging this stuff into their workflow, or if they want to start a new project, how that may look based on a blockchain architecture.
So let me get this straight. You're helping people you're helping businesses and organizations see where their future could be with blockchain and smart contracts, and you're helping them map out the journey from where they are now into that future. Correct.
Yeah. So many people, what it is that they've heard about the blockchain. They may even have a slight grasp on what's going on, but to take that next step and to really get a handle on everything is quite hard. I mean, we do a podcast around some of it, and it's just such a broad area, and not a lot of it's documented. There's not a lot of standards out there. Everything's still really fresh. It can be quite hard. And so my passion is, and why I'm doing this new project, is to be able to first of all talk to people, talk to businesses, teach them about the fundamentals of the blockchain, and then kind of help them to start thinking with what I call a blockchain mindset. And then we can begin looking at mapping out. And that could be something they might be able to do themselves once they know a bit more about it, or something that I can help them with to map out that journey. And then as we start hitting those points where it makes sense to start implementing some of that, to start building it and implementing it, whether that be now or whether that be in a year or 2 years, then begin that journey with them into actually integrating this stuff and building it. And that's kind of the motivation there. So at the moment, I'm doing more seminar work, beginning to talk to businesses about coming and talking to their employees, or even just their leadership group. But as time goes on, it will be a lot more practical focused. And that's where I'm focusing a lot of my efforts, kind of skilling my own practical expertise up in anticipation of where things are going to be in 6 months and a year. So
mate, this is awesome. So if I'm listening to this and I'm like, this sounds super keen, where do I go? What can I do? Can I say, so I'm guessing I can subscribe to a blog? What can I do?
So the site's called BlockSense that all the content's on. It's BlockSense, BLOCK-sense, SENSE.io. And you can sign up there to a mailing list, and that mailing list will then get you the regular updates that come out through that. Awesome. We'll probably... the FOMO show's up there as well, so we'll be pushing out regular updates through that as well, and we've got to get our own mailing list up on the FOMO show site too. So look out for that.
I've made so many promises and things to put up on the website. I've done none of it.
We're just really busy people at the moment.
Okay, everybody, you, myself, everyone listening, we've all had problems with procrastination, and it's probably something we all hate. You know, we feel like we're being unproductive, we're wasting time, scrolling down on Facebook, but ultimately, we've all got the same problem. And I haven't got a fix for it, because I've been sitting there 6 years with a reminder that pops up every day. Start this blog. It actually comes up on my phone. I just swipe it away. Same with my bedtime alarm. It's one of the things I just ignore.
Yeah.
And if you're listening and you've got if you've done anything, if you used to be really bad at procrastinating and you came up with a solution, drop us a message. I would be so keen to learn.
But also, if you're sitting on something that you want, if there's something you want to do, this is what I've learned in the last 6 to 9 months. If there's something you want to do and you've been talking about doing it, it sounds really simple to say, but just do it. Just
start
make
somewhere.
A start. Because, even with this podcast, we for probably a couple of months before we started this podcast, would just talk about blockchain. And then I said, we should start a podcast, mate. And then we kind of joked around about it for a while. Then we're like, that would actually be really fun. let's do it. Let's and we just did it.
We had zero problems with the procrastination. There was like zero, like it just happened.
Yeah.
Not everything can happen like that. Maybe if you're working on a project, you just need to find somebody else to work on the project with you. Yeah. And then you can just...
Because you can keep each other accountable. I mean, I think we make a point of recording at a certain time every single week, and we keep each other accountable to that. And it's kind of like, I don't want to let Joe down, and you're probably, I don't want to let Matt down.
Yeah. We got to record on Mondays. It's not, we're not like every other Monday. We're not messing about.
There was something like I really needed to get done, but I was like, no. Joe was like, let's just record, and I was like, yep, no, you're right. We just need to record, and here we are. So it's
episode 15.
Episode 15.
How keen is that? And you're welcome to the show. If it's your first time here, I mean, it's so great having you here.
It's like, we really appreciate you listening. And look, if there's anything you want to hear about, either in relation to blockchain or from us, if you've got any questions for us, let us know. We're just trying to bring a little bit more of ourselves to the show, and not just talk about all our topics all the time.
Yeah.
And because I think we've learnt some real lessons doing this, and it's nice to be able to share that as well and connect with you guys. So, yeah.
So what's been going on this week?
So the Snowden docs, which were released a few years ago, people are still pouring through them. So there's so many documents that were leaked from that. And one of the things that's come out of those documents is that the NSA, the National Security Agency, actively worked to track down Bitcoin users from 2013 onwards.
It's pretty crazy. So the documents suggest that it went way beyond actually tracking Bitcoin's public transaction ledger, known as the blockchain. They actually collected some Bitcoin users' passwords, internet activity, and even some of their unique device identifiers, so the MAC address on your computer, according to a 2013 NSA memo. But yeah, they as part of their bulk data collection programs, they've actually been grabbing a huge amount of information for years about Bitcoin users. So, and been using that to identify them and track down a lot of illegal activity. And you remember the Dread Pirate Roberts, the chap who got stuck in prison for running the Silk Road, the dark net marketplace.
Ross Ulbricht.
Yeah. So he'd been claiming when he was going through the court system, he was like, look, the NSA he claimed the NSA had used illegal techniques to get evidence against him. And while these documents don't exactly say that precisely, it's showing that around that time, the NSA were doing a huge amount of research into Bitcoin blockchain, and people, all the transactions and identities of people. And considering how big that marketplace was at the time, would not surprise me if there was illegal surveillance that was used to track him down, and use this evidence against him.
It's very interesting. The whole dark web thing in general is quite interesting, because one of the biggest investors in the Tor Foundation, which runs a lot of the access to the dark web, is the US military.
It was built by the US Navy, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they helped build a lot of it.
That should be a big red flag. If you're going to go and do some illegal activity, why are you using a military built?
No, it's true. And I think, looking at most of the documents that have come out of this thing, I think it would be hard to make the case that they haven't used some illegal techniques to gather some of this evidence.
I guess they're an intelligence agency. They're not supposed to abide by the law.
Yeah, well, I mean, the law doesn't apply to a lot of intelligence agencies, really. They're kind of given an immunity to hunt things down. And look, there are instances where that may be beneficial to society, but the fact is, it's just something to be aware of. If you are a cryptocurrency user, especially if you've been using it for a long time, you just should be aware that there's a good chance that you have already been put somewhere on a list, and you may well be getting watched and getting tracked. I think there's this misconception with a lot of people who get into crypto that it's really private, when it's really not. And I'm yet to see a really good article explaining, even with the privacy coins, about whether privacy coins actually keep you private totally. But I know for a fact that just because you're using something that is anonymized in some way doesn't mean you're not leaking a whole bunch of information in other ways. And enough information that they can tie you at the source to, that public key and know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's just something to be aware of, and it's something good to be aware of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's no guaranteed privacy, and as soon as you think that you're, I guess, completely secure, probably when you're most vulnerable.
Yeah, and look, my general advice to anyone really is just that you should really act as if anything you write down or send to someone via anything on the internet could be before a judge one day.
Right.
And that's generally a good way to go about it because the internet has permanence. It's hard just to get things completely taken off the internet. There's all sorts of caching services now that cache all sorts of social media, and I know of government employees that they don't even bother looking at social media platforms as they stand now. They go to these caching services and they can find stuff that's been deleted 4 years ago or stuff that's been deleted 6 or 7 years ago, So it's just a very good practice for your own, private use, just to be very careful about what you put online. Because something can seem totally innocent, but there was a saying, I can't remember who it's from, but it's like, essentially it says, give me 4 phrases from the most innocent man and I'll find something upon which to hang him. Ooh. And it's very true. The way that we look at things is very subjective, and it's just really good practice to be very careful about what you put online and what you say online, and just always be aware that may end up before someone else one day.
There was some random piece of news. There was a claim that Yahoo Japan was going to buy some Japanese exchange, but that sort of fell through like a day later when people were like, no, that's not actually a thing. The actual Japanese exchange themselves were like, no, it's not. We're open to things, but
a lot of fake
really
news circling around at the moment, I think. Yeah.
A lot of excitement. People are getting ahead of the fact checking.
That's right. Yeah. It's a good strategy actually when you're reading these. There's a whole bunch of different crypto news sites, but it's just a good strategy whenever you're reading any of them, just to make sure that they're referencing things and there's references from more than one place. Especially in the crypto world, when there's so much money flying around and people are really paranoid about, what's the next bit of news going to do the market. Journalists just have the tendency to pass things on and write articles based on other articles, and it's like
it's about the first to the story, not the best
it's like
story.
a game of Chinese whispers, like it's the first person that whispers in someone's ear they have a dog, they get to the end and it's like the octopus went to lunch. Like, where did we get that from?
Yeah, Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter, and I think he's the founder of Square, which is a big payments provider for merchants. If you run a business, you can get a little Square payments system that you can sort of swipe cards and
they've got
payment.
a Bitcoin wallet now too.
Yeah. So Square, they run cash.me, I think it is, where it's basically a little debit card that you can sort of keep money in and get money off other people.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Visa card that's there? You can get a custom Visa. Go to if you're listening and you're on an internet browser, go on cash.me and just scroll down on that website and just look at the Visa debit card that you can get. You can get a custom Visa card, just black, which says Visa debit in the top right corner, and underneath you can have your signature written on it. How keen is that?
The signature there for everyone to see.
Yeah, perfect way to commit bank fraud, eh? But yeah, he said that Bitcoin will be the world's single currency in a decade. What do you reckon about that?
Yeah, I find this one really interesting because this is coming from a guy that literally just invested in Lightning Labs, which is the company that's building the Lightning Network architecture in consultation with, I think, Blockstream and one of the other big Bitcoin core players.
Right.
So to me, like, while it could just be someone that's really hyped on an investment that he's just made, it's also someone that knows the power of news and knows the power of his position to influence market sentiment. And by him saying that he thinks Bitcoin will be the only currency in 10 years, a cynic would say that, well, that's just self-interested marketing.
Yeah.
Because, if he manages to bump the Bitcoin price by 5% or bump the stock price in his company by 10-15% in this new investment, he's already made his money back. And that's a cheap way for him to increase the value of his investment. Look, let's look at his actual claim on its face. And his claim is that Bitcoin will be the only cryptocurrency in 10 years. It'll be the single currency in a decade. Now, look, 2 years ago, when Bitcoin held like 95% market share or something close to it, I think that could have been believable. But the trend of the way that crypto has been going says anything but. Consistently from about 2 years ago onwards, Bitcoin's market dominance has been gradually dropping. It's been dropping and dropping and dropping as Ethereum and Litecoin and Cardano and all sorts, and Dash and all sorts of other things have popped up. And he's come out and said that, but I don't see any indication that that's actually what's happening at all. So if you look at what's happening in the market, I feel like it's more like, no, there's going to be a whole bunch of currencies. There might, some might fall off and there might be some definite winners, but I just can't see how everyone that's now diversified and are really invested in these other projects and cryptos are going to come back to Bitcoin as the main solution. Especially when, you look at the momentum behind Ethereum and you look at the momentum behind Neo, which we'll be talking about later, and several of these other projects. I can't see any of them coming back within the fold.
Because you do wonder how many of these, because there are thousands of cryptocurrencies these days.
Yeah.
But you wonder, when the music stops, you wonder how many of them are going to have a seat. And, is it going to be 5, 12, more? Thousands as there are now? It makes me wonder. I honestly don't know. But, it's feasible that Bitcoin could be the thing that everything is priced in.
Yeah.
Sort of like our universal means of measuring. But it's a very good point. I don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely, Bitcoin still is definitely the market dominator by a long shot. And you could definitely see it as kind of like the US dollar of today, becoming kind of like that more stable, comparatively stable coin. But I in my personal view, at least the way I'm, not investment advice, but the way I'm leaning towards is that the ones that are going to survive when the music stops are the ones that have built genuine niches and use cases for themselves.
Right.
Like if you've got a currency that's performing a function that no one else can perform, then I think that currency has a seat at the table. That platform has a seat at the table. That's really interesting to talk about because at the moment we've kind of got these two separate worlds of like the internet and currencies. And you've got currencies perform one function really in most of the world. Like your Australian dollar, US dollar, it's just a transactional currency. It gets a little bit blurry when you get like the oil, the US oil. When US dollar gets tied to oil or US dollar gets tied to different resources and they become these kind of like pseudo commodities that are kind of mixed in with the currency. But I don't think it's to the same extent that we're seeing in crypto where we've really got platforms and currencies with more than just a simply transactional element to them. So I wonder whether most of the survivors that we'll see when everything stops are the quote unquote currencies that have more to them. The Ethereums, the EOSs, the Cardanos, the Neos that have built platforms around their currency and provide some real extra use cases to which that currency is essential.
Yeah. What do you reckon? When the music stops, how many players do you reckon they're going to be? Let us know. Tweet us, FOMO.show. Jump in our Slack messaging system, FOMO.show/Slack. Let us know what you think.
So, Matt, I came across this really interesting article about the crypto winter. And it's funny for us in Australia because it's summer at the moment, but for the rest of the world, it's winter. And it talks about the 10 best and worst performing altcoins of the crypto winter 2018. And essentially it's talking about which altcoins have done the best and which altcoins have done the worst in the last 3 months. So since the market kind of plummeted, what has been the most wrecked and what has been the least wrecked?
Mate, that's fascinating how the market peaked at around $820 billion US dollars in early January. And now we're sort of looking just below the 400 billion mark. It's great. So people just jumped in at the top, said, I'm never doing this again. Sold. Yikes.
And I think that's why people are being nervous to get back in. Because it's just, no one knows where the bottom is.
It's been a nice sort of slow slump, though. I mean, if I'd had more cash to invest, I bought on the way down. And it's still good prices. And now I've just got to wait a bit longer and then buy some more. Yeah. But it's pretty keen.
I think it's good. I think it was good for everyone to catch their breath. And, it's allowed people to focus more on what projects we're actually doing than just on the price. But anyway, we've got this list.
Oh wow! So the
isn't that
this? I was thinking they've made a spelling mistake or something. They said the top 10 altcoins that fared relatively well during this downtrend include. And then you've got like DigiXDAO, which went down 41%, Litecoin, which down 60%, Monero down 60%, Binance Coin down 60%, Ethereum down 63%. Those are the ones that are doing relatively well.
They did the best. Yeah. So the top 10, the top altcoin in this whole downtrend, so the one that did the best, went down 41%.
Well, do you know what? That's good news if you're looking to buy it. But I mean, sheesh, if you're holding that.
And then the top 10 cryptos that were mauled, as they say, by the bears in this downtrend. And this list doesn't include BitConnect. And we'll put the link in the show notes so you guys can look at it. But in descending order, it goes Zcash, which is 96%, Bitcoin Gold 89%, ADA 89%, Seacoin 88%, Verge 88%, Tron 88%, NEM 86%, Cardano 85%, Bytecoin 85%, and HShare 85%.
So that's like if you'd put in $10, you've now got $2. Or less.
Or less. I mean, if you invested in Zcash at the height and you put in $10, you would now have 40 cents.
The market gives you opportunities. Whether this is an opportunity or not, time will only tell. But what are you doing in this situation? Are you just hodling?
Yeah, mate, I'm honestly not doing too much. I mean, my focus has been elsewhere. I haven't really even had the chance to look into it much. And for me personally, I'm more and more distrustful of exchanges, like the centralized exchanges that we've got. I'm really hanging out for some good decentralized exchanges where I can just, transact with people on a basically one-to-one basis without an intermediary. When you see news like Coinbase giving up, 10,000, a whole bunch of 15,000 people's records, and there's been talk around other exchanges doing a similar thing as well. I'm just waiting, just biding my time, and I think, look, I didn't invest basically anything in the big run up anyway. I kind of. When I saw the euphoria and the amount of hype around everything, I just said, nah.
Mate, it was ridiculous. My portfolio grew way too fast, and I was getting excited. I'm not going to lie. I was like, wow. Then it went down, and I was like, oh, everything's getting cheaper, and I was buying more. But now I'm just sort of sitting there like, well, I've bought as it went down, and now I'm just going to all I do is buy. I haven't sold anything yet. Yeah. I'm just, I bought a couple of things with Litecoin, but...
To be honest, the only stuff I've really traded recently was to put I put some Bitcoin into Dash so I could use Dash to pay for things.
Nice.
The Brisbane, for those of you guys that aren't in Brisbane is really becoming great for crypto payments very quickly because of the work that the Travel by Bit guys are doing.
Yeah.
And
it's literally them single-handedly are making this city somewhere that you can actually go and eat food, have drinks, buy, get your hair cut.
Yeah.
Go and you can actually travel around and paying with crypto.
Yeah, and they've made it so the back end runs on Living Room of Satoshi, I believe, which is we've talked about it before. Yeah, you can pay any bank account with crypto. And they'd make it really easy. They just go in, you walk in, there's a tablet that they give merchants, and they just put in the amount and which currency we want to pay with. And then a little QR code pops up and you just scan that on your phone and hit send, and a second later it's done. And that's all they have to do. They get paid in... They can choose whether they get paid in crypto or they get paid in Australian dollars. And it's really simple, mate.
So if you do decide to come and visit this vanquished part of the world, drop by Brisbane and drop us a note. Say hello. We'll come and have a Bitcoin beer with you, but neither of us own enough Bitcoin to buy a beer, so I guess we'll just pay with something else.
But yeah, check out the link in the show notes for the Crypto Winter article.
Mate, this is something I know very little about, but I'm still going to talk about anyway. It's coming out. It's just something to be aware of. We're just a little emerging markets update. So, there's the ACFTA, ACFTA, lovely little acronym, the African Continent Free Trade Area deal. Now, the signing is going to be the leaders of 55-ish countries in Africa are going to be signing this deal. Now, it's going to take some time because, getting agreement from 55 different people it's easier said than done, I reckon. But basically, it's going to make intracontinental trading easier, so between African nations. So, according to the BBC, while raw materials are abundant, like the processing facilities aren't actually common with Africa for a lot of these raw materials, like oil, things like that. So, a lot of materials are actually shipped outside the continent. So, in Africa, still on the BBC here, just 16% of trade is between African countries.
Wow.
Which is actually really low compared to a lot of other areas. So it may not have a massive impact right now, but 20 years after this being signed and having free trade between African nations, this could be such great news. And I'm super excited for this because so many fascinating countries in Africa. It's not just Nigeria, it's not just South Africa. You've got Angola. There's a huge amount of resources there.
Yeah.
You've got a huge amount of potential in like Kenya. Huge amounts of things going on there.
Yeah.
A bunch of these countries have huge amounts of raw materials and creative power that's just coming online.
Yeah, and education too. Kenya's a really good example of what a good education program can really do. There's been a lot of work with NGOs in that country to bring some really high quality educational standards there. And you're seeing a lot of really bright people come out there, very, very well educated now. Like you said, mate, there is so much potential in that area, and the significance of the raw materials not being able to be processed and refined and kind of converted within Africa is quite significant because it's generally that refining or conversion process where all the money is made
and where all the value's added. Yeah, you're right.
The raw materials themselves are generally pretty cheap, and the margins aren't huge. It's once those materials are made into something, into a product that can be sold to the consumer, that's where the real margins are. And so what's happening is essentially Africa are trading away their margin to other continents, and they're only getting compensated for the raw materials, which is
a real shame. Yeah.
It is a real shame. It's kind of worked for them so far as it goes, but it's really interesting to see the powers that be starting to wake up to this in Africa and make some efforts to change it. Because like we've talked about before, Africa's they've been kind of the puppet at the end of the world's fingers, there's been a lot of overseas interests in that place that have kind of dictated what's gone on there.
British and French, we have, and the Portuguese. All three of these countries have a dark history there.
That's true, and they're finally kind of emerging from what's gone on in the last few centuries.
So exciting to see. Absolutely fascinating. Now, on the FOMO show, we'll continue down the line talking about the different index funds that are invested in Africa. We'll be giving updates on infrastructure, because it's amazing how smallish changes that we might think are happening actually have huge impacts. So we're going to be watching that. So keep tuned to the FOMO show. We'll be covering that over many years to come because that is my retirement. Is a good proportion of my retirement funds are invested here.
So watch this space.
So IBM have created a prototype for the world's smallest computer for blockchain tech, and it measures a millimeter by a millimeter.
Yeah, look, whatever you're doing right now, stop it. Go into the show notes, find the one that says IBM creates world's smallest computer or something, whatever we've called it. Click on it, open it up, because the image that pops up when you first open this article shows exactly how small this little computer chip is,
and how big that is for the blockchain.
And it is tiny. It fits on like the tiny part of your finger, but within this little computer, you've got a processor, memory, storage, and a communications module. And if you're familiar with computer science at all, you would know that that is all you need for a complete computer system that can communicate with another computer system. Which is all you need for something to communicate with the blockchain. So it's essentially sized like a grain of salt. And the article says a final version of the microscopic computer could cost as little as 10 cents per unit to manufacture. IBM expects to begin offering these crypto anchors, they're calling, microcomputers to customers in the next 18 months or so. At that point, it will be up to the industry to devise a blockchain system to authenticate goods. IBM believes this technology will become commonplace in the next 5 years, which I think is quite a conservative estimate with how good this could be.
Well, surely, if you can make them this small, you can just attach them to pretty much every product, everything. You know, we were talking last episode about Walmart patenting a bunch of stuff for measuring things going through their system, temperature info, all of this sort of stuff. Now, it's almost like having a little... Would that be what they were using it for?
Exactly, like it's no coincidence that this has come out after they've announced that arrangement with Maersk, because I've already seen some articles, I don't know whether they were from IBM or from someone else, talking about the fact that what they're planning on doing is making everything essentially within that supply chain have a chip, and that chip is connected to a blockchain, and the moment it goes into somewhere new, so let's say the cargo gets lifted off the ship into port, the cargo container will know that it's not on the ship anymore, but it's in port, and it'll be reporting that to the blockchain. And then within the cargo container, there'll be a whole bunch of boxes, and they'll each have a destination assigned to them, and they'll be communicating with the blockchain and saying, we're now in port, and whatever smart contract is attached to that can then... it'll be monitoring the blockchain, and it'll go, oh, they're now in port. Do whatever I need to do, and then it can communicate with the courier company and say, this container's in port. This box is in port. This parcel's in port. Go pick it up.
Postal tracking is going to get great.
It's because if you've got a 1x1 millimeter chip, these things are going to make building smart items and blockchain enabled. Containers, parcels, whatever it be. I mean, we've talked about cars before, having a chip in each part of the car to monitor whatever signals come in and, report back to the car computer, and then the car computer can report to a blockchain if it needs to. That's all going to be possible with a little chip like this. You can essentially fit this in anything.
So just on this, go back to if you haven't seen it already, episode 11 we covered Boaty McBoatchain, where we covered IBM and Maersk, the massive shipping company, their logistics, blockchain, tech investments interest. We talk all about that there, so really interesting, all about ports and permissions and all kinds of things. Go back to our episode 11, really worth checking out. And this tiny chip works exactly with that, and I'm so glad you mentioned, man, because I didn't fully make that connection until you mentioned it. But like every shipping container is going to have one of those, and that's fascinating. And look, that's really, I mean, we talk about adoption all the time. We talk about when blockchain is going to kind of become useful to enterprise generally, and I think this is a huge step in that direction, because the whole manufacturing sector is going to be able to quite inexpensively put some kind of blockchain functionality in their products. And the thing about a chip like this is all you need to do is feed it inputs from elsewhere in your product, and it can do nearly whatever you want it to do. So, Matt, I'm really, really excited for this. I think the possibilities are going to be pretty much endless. And
I think, look, hats off to IBM. Like, I'm continually blown away by this company and how forward-thinking they are.
With Watson, with a lot of their smart city stuff.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
You know, they really are. They really seem like they want to build the backbone for the next, you know, the blockchain future, and it's really cool, man. So watch this space. The chip itself is still a prototype, so it's only just been developed, but I can guarantee you that they are trying to get this thing to market as quick as they can before anyone else does, because the possibilities that it presents is pretty mind-blowing.
Mate, 10 cents per unit. That is ridiculously cheap.
It's really cheap, man. If you can make anything blockchain compatible for 10 cents, 10 cents per unit, and then
I want to see
thousands of dollars of programming.
I want to see DHL. Okay, let's call it. I want to see DHL and FedEx just jump on this.
If you'd like to be a part of the show, why not send us a voice recording? If it's under a minute long and in an MP3 or WAV file, we'll try our best to fit you into the show. Whether you're sharing news, a few facts about an industry, an interesting tidbit, or just even an observation, you can email it to us at fomoshow@protonmail.com. We'll put the email in the show notes. This episode's Coin of the Week, we're going to talk about Neo.
My name is Neo.
Yeah, so Neo is essentially an Ethereum competitor, and it was called AntShares until late last year when they rebranded and called it Neo. Now, what it essentially proposes to be is a smart contract platform similar to Ethereum, but with some differences, and it's come out of China. So it's a China-based platform, and it's got a lot of backing behind it from the Chinese community. When I first heard about this, I thought, well, it's an Ethereum competitor, but it's a long way behind. Can it really compete with this big juggernaut that is Ethereum? And especially because it sounds like it does similar things. It's kind of structured somewhat similarly, although we'll get into a lot of the differences soon. But the biggest thing it's got going for it is from China, and it seems to have gotten a lot of momentum behind it from the Chinese community and especially the Chinese business community.
Okay. You've got WeChat. You've got, even Alibaba is a huge company, which lets you basically get directly in touch with manufacturers in China.
Yep.
And that is it's up there with Amazon in size. It's huge.
Yeah, and we hear about Amazon a lot because that's kind of the Western version, but Alibaba is their valuation is right up there near Amazon, and that's because they've come out of China and they've kind of got the whole momentum of the Chinese business community behind them as this outwards facing manufacturing, building solutions for things kind of country. And that's why when you get a blockchain platform that's coming out of that kind of environment with that kind of momentum behind it, it's really good to at least sit up and take notice. So that's why we wanted to dig into Neo.
Yeah.
And look, the other thing to say about Neo too is one of the big reasons I think they've succeeded in building a very good supporter base has been their marketing. They've made a real push since they swapped from AntShares to Neo to market really, really well, and they've used a whole bunch of different strategies to do that. And I've been very impressed with how they've presented their product, and they've made it attractive to a lot of people that really didn't know much about it when it was AntShares. And another thing they've done really well too is focus on partnerships, and there's a lot of parallels with what Ethereum's done with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance and a lot of the companies involved in that, and what Neo have done with a lot of their partnerships. They've made a real effort to partner with a lot of big Chinese businesses. They've been actively partnering with some of the government of China as well, which is always a really good idea. Some of the government departments there, and I think even some Western companies that have a presence in China, like Microsoft, have had a lot to do with Neo over the past 6 or so months. And so it seems like they're doing all the right things, kind of just like what Ethereum has done with their alliances, to make sure that there's a very big enterprise presence and a developer presence behind what they're doing. One of the big differences I've seen with it, mate, is that they seem to focus a lot more on being regulator friendly. Now, Ethereum have been all of their material and the community behind it have had a lot more of a focus on just doing things very decentralized and very open source, and kind of despite of regulations. I mean, the ICO trend is like one of the big examples of that. It's kind of a move fast and break things mentality. We're just going to do this and
apologize later.
That's right. Yeah. It's easy to ask for forgiveness and permission. Whereas it seems like Neo have made a lot more of an effort to build a mentality into their platform and some mechanisms into their platform where they can actively take part in regulations for countries. And I think that's something that's really promising, because, like it or not, we're not going to see the state-based systems that we know and love collapse overnight. They are, at least for the next decade or two, here to stay. So what Neo is proposing to be is a digital asset platform. There seems to be a big focus on tokenizing and bringing real-world assets to the blockchain, and that seems to be where they're saying they're going to build this smart economy, because they see a real need to have an intersection between the real world and the blockchain and allow physical assets to have a digitization feature. And that kind of follows on from what we were talking about earlier with this IBM microchip. That it will make a lot of sense that assets can interact with the blockchain. And so what they're essentially saying with this digital asset economy is that you could essentially put a car on the blockchain or a house on the blockchain and attach a certain identifier to that asset, and then allow transactions with that asset on the blockchain, which cut around a lot of the current back and forth and administrative issues with the transferring of assets and working out who has right of ownership and who doesn't have right of ownership and everything in relation to that. One of the biggest areas that they really need to get at to be able to have a system like that allows this smart economy is digital identity. And they've taken a little bit of a different approach to Ethereum. Ethereum has very much taken a decentralized approach to that. They would like to see a decentralized identity that was not contingent on any kind of state organization whatsoever. Whereas Neo has taken the view that governments should be actively involved in giving these identities, because they're the current custodians of identity verification at the moment. So it makes a lot more sense to kind of get on the front foot with them and say, hey, let's help you get on the blockchain. Let's help you get people's identities onto this digital smart economy so that we can move forward and start pushing assets around, and we know that these people are who they say they are. And that seems to really run through Neo in general, the way they're approaching things. They're very much about working with existing infrastructure, working with the way existing power works. And look, quite frankly, that's how they've got to do it. If they're based in China,
it's quite sensible
if they take the view of Ethereum, they're not going to have a good time. And that's arguably why Ethereum hasn't had a good time in China, just because there hasn't been that active involvement with the state entity that Neo has.
Well, I guess in the same way as, in Britain they have, buy British food. In Australia they're like, buy Australian food, and when they put flags on products and you're like, oh, I'm going to buy that because it's Australian. China's going to be no different.
Yep. Yeah, and that's recognizing that is actually a big step, I think, and it's one of the reasons why I think Neo is so attractive as a really interesting alternative, because they're building infrastructure that will not only slot in with the Chinese way of doing things, but it will slot in with the British way of doing things. It'll slot in with the Australian way of doing things. Once this technology is built, it will be quite easy for them to go to an Australian government, go to a British government and say, look, we've built this thing. Yeah, it works in China. We get that you don't really like China for a bunch of various reasons, but hey, the technology will work really well with what you're doing, and we're happy to help you set it up too. And when you see something like that, especially for an ecosystem that's quite well advanced, it gives it a big head start on where Ethereum is and where a whole bunch of other ones are, because it makes it a lot easier for existing power structures to harness the blockchain and provides ways that you and I can still benefit.
Yeah. So when we're looking at the technicals here, how do we, what kind of specs are we looking at for this? Where do we compare it with Ethereum? Where is this totally new in some ways?
So Neo is quite similar to Ethereum in the way it manages. It has a transaction fee. So you've got a Ether, which is a currency of Ethereum, and then you've got gas, and
which you pay to make transactions with Ethereum.
That's right. You pay to essentially get the Ethereum virtual machine to do operations.
Okay.
So if you want to get the operating system of Ethereum to do something for you, you got to pay a transaction. So, let's say I want to send money from you to me using Ethereum. That's updating your contract state to have less and updating my contract state to have more. My account state, your account state. And Neo's kind of similar in that it uses a similar model, but it actually splits things up into two currencies. So you've got Neo and gas. And Neo is what you can essentially purchase, and it allows you to have a stake. It's kind of like a little share of the Neo network, and whenever you have that in your Neo wallet, it'll start accruing gas. So this gas just starts filling up automatically. Now, if you need more gas, you can always go out and buy gas from someone else, because someone may say, well, I want to have a stake. I want to be able to make decisions on the network.
Sorry, I'm a little confused. Is there a difference? So there's definitely a difference between Neo gas and Ethereum gas.
Yeah, so Ethereum gas is essentially just Ethereum.
Just with a different name?
When it says gas cost, the gas cost is still in Ethereum.
Right.
It's just that you have to pay that fee for transactions, and that's called the gas.
So with Neo, gas is a separate...
Neo gas is actually, separate currencies. So you've got two currencies. So you've got Neo and then you've got gas.
Okay.
And by staking your Neo in your wallet, or just having your Neo sitting in your wallet, it will start accruing gas.
Cool.
So it's kind of like free transaction money, And if you need more, if you're doing a lot of computations, you can go and buy it from somewhere else, and it's quite easy. But it splits it up, which is really interesting, and it kind of allows there to be a big differentiation between Neo, which is essentially the stake in the network, and gas, which is the transactional part of the network. The reason that makes sense is because Neo is proof of stake. So Ethereum is proof of work, which is kind of like Bitcoin. You've got a whole bunch of computers all linked up as nodes, and they're all competing to produce blocks. Whereas Neo is using proof of stake, and that's essentially where you have a wallet on a computer, you host the nodes, you have the whole blockchain on your computer, and then you freeze those funds. You essentially say, I'm going to lock these funds up, and now that they're locked up, I'm going to just secure the network. I'm going to have these here as my proof that I've got the funds, and I'll secure the network. And you get assigned a chance to... write blocks to the blockchain because of your stake. Neo is a little bit more similar to EOS, which we've talked about before, in that it uses a delegated version of proof of stake. So essentially you have what they call bookkeepers, and bookkeepers are kind of like big nodes, and you, as someone that holds Neo, can vote for these bookkeepers and say, I want this bookkeeper to write the blocks and to make decisions on my behalf. So it's kind of like voting in an election, I guess. You elect your member of parliament to the parliament of Neo, and they go off and then produce the legislation, which is the blocks. And if you don't like what they're doing, you can send your vote somewhere else. But it means you don't have to be involved every single day in making the decisions and tying a computer up with the network. You just get a certain weight to your decisions based on the amount of Neo that you hold. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So that's delegated proof of stake.
Yeah, they call it delegated Byzantine fault tolerance, but I think that's just them trying to find a different name for it. Whenever they want to make any decision, so these delegates, these bookkeepers, they have to reach 66% consensus before that decision can be made. So it's a 2/3 majority kind of model.
That's not easy. I mean, Brexit was 52-48. I mean,
yeah.
Well, no, if it was a 66% decision, anyway, enough of that. Neo.
But of course, then this creates an issue because it then becomes centralized, and you're essentially centralizing all the power with a few of these bookkeepers. Which at first I was looking at it and I thought, oh, well, that's kind of different to Ethereum. But then I was thinking about it. There's not many big block producers in Ethereum. Most of the big miners are the ones that produce most of the blocks. So the power to write blocks is actually quite centralized in Ethereum as well. And Bitcoin, and there's a lot of networks that are like that. So,
Right.
but the big benefit of this proof of stake or delegated proof of stake is that it gives a lot faster transaction speeds. Neo's estimated at 1,000 transactions per second, whereas Ethereum's only 15 transactions per second.
Ethereum have eventually got to just up their game,
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline. I mean, they've got sharding in the pipeline. They've got the Raiden network. There's all these different things that they're working on to try and bring it up.
Right.
And Casper, which is another one they're working on. I'm
Right.
pretty sure which is the one that's associated with proof of stake.
Right.
So they're hoping to move to proof of stake as well.
Right.
But it's really strange, mate. Like, I love so much of what's going on in Ethereum, but the platform is just so behind, and they're having to work so hard to kind of bootstrap this thing up from the
Yeah.
proof of work into proof of stake.
Yeah, it's not like an easy process, I guess.
It's not like an easy process, and I think
It's like trying to change the motor in a moving vehicle.
it really is, because there's so much momentum
And
behind
getting
this
60 people to agree on how we're going to do it.
thing. Yeah, and because this thing's moving, and it's moving fast, but it's the motor's like blowing out every couple of seconds, because there's just so much it's so far behind everything else. So that's why we're seeing these other platforms come up, like Neo, like Cardano, like EOS, who've looked at Ethereum and been like, oh, I think we could do it better.
So Neo gives... So there are two tokens, Neo and Gas. Neo gives you a stake in the decision-making.
Yeah.
It means that you can help elect or choose the bookkeepers.
Yeah.
And it gives you rights to like a share of the platform.
That's right.
And then Gas, which is like the transaction fees that you pay, is an entitlement that you get by hodling Neo.
Yep.
And staking the network.
Yeah. And
Okay.
because there's so much of a transaction capability per second, fees tend to be really low. So you don't tend to be having to spend a lot of gas to make your transactions, and it does make it a lot more beneficial for microtransactional type of things.
How is that incentive? How does that incentive work?
Yeah, so the bookkeepers are essentially allowed to charge a transaction fee in gas for the transactions on the blockchain, and they're the only ones that receive that gas. But it's actually really interesting, because decoupling gas from Neo tends to incentivize bookkeepers to keep transactions fees low.
Is that because of competition between bookkeepers to offer lower?
That's right. Because the Neo holders have the capability to elect the bookkeepers.
Right.
If a bookkeeper consistently votes to keep fees high, all the Neo holders are going to say, well, we can't trust you anymore to be a bookkeeper. We're going to elect someone else. And they can essentially stop electing that bookkeeper with their Neo and elect someone different who's going to keep transactions lower. And the other thing too is that if fees are significantly higher all the time, people aren't going to want to use the Neo platform. They're going to want to go somewhere else where fees are cheaper. So it's in the best interest of the bookkeepers to keep fees low to attract as many people as possible to the system. That's the logic anyway. How these bookkeepers will behave once a lot of people are on the system remains to be seen.
When you really come to comparing Neo with Ethereum, we've got smart contracts here. We've got Ethereum virtual machines. What's going on there? How does Neo work for this?
Firstly, looking at Ethereum has one main smart contract language, which is Solidity, and that compiles down into like a bytecode for the Ethereum virtual machine. And so for those people who don't know, bytecode is essentially what all of your computers run on.
Right.
That's like the very lowest layer. It's like binary code.
Right.
And that's kind of the most basic version of computer language you can really get.
Okay.
And so Solidity is built to interact directly with that. And it's kind of like a cross between JavaScript, which runs a lot of what you see on the internet, and C++, which runs a lot of what you see in like games and databases.
Right.
And, a lot of the really intensive programs will run on C++. The other thing to say about Solidity too is that it's its own language. So you have to learn it. it's different to any other language you've ever really seen. Neo, on the other hand, has 5 different languages, and they're all languages that people already know. So what they do is they say, look, we will let you code in these languages that you already know, and they're trying to add more to the platform as we go. And we are going to instead build a virtual machine which takes that coding and translates it into the smart contract language, and then we'll put it on the virtual machine. That way, it makes it so that the developers can jump on, start coding in languages they're familiar on, and then Neo does the work to implement those languages on their virtual machine.
Holy cow, are you saying that this optimizes the code?
That's right.
That's idiot-proof.
If you're
That's actually idiot-proof.
Yeah, like if you're like a staunch developer, you'll be like, no, that everyone should code properly, and we shouldn't make it easier for people. But they've built some standards around this, and they've really thought about, okay, how can we make this more attractive for developers? Because the big problem Ethereum's running into is that developers don't want to develop for it because they've got to learn a whole new language, and they've got to learn a whole new way to do things.
And you've got to get things done and delivered and shipped and stuff like that, and who's got time to learn?
Exactly. Yeah. And look, they're working on another language called Viper Ethereum, and it's kind of like based on Python. That's why they've called it Viper. Nice. But still, it's not clever. It's not Python. Like it's another language that that they've developed for Ethereum specifically. And so I think it's really interesting that Neo have chosen to say, let's build a system that works with what we've already got. And that seems to be the mentality through everything. They're like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's make it as easy as possible to develop for this thing. And let's instead focus our efforts on taking all that stuff that they do in the format that they know and distill it into something that works better. Just distill it into good smart contract language. And look, the other thing to say is, to Ethereum's credit, they plan to implement this, but at the same time, they plan to implement proof of stake for over two years, and we're still not there.
We're waiting.
We're still waiting, So while there is some progress, these guys have built this from the ground up, and it does make it more attractive.
Yeah.
The way it optimizes things, it does mean it takes slightly longer for the code to execute, but that's balanced off by the fact that it's optimized. The time work that they're doing is optimizing it.
So right now the price is actually better than it was Christmas time.
Yeah, Neo had like a late run, had a really late bull run, and then it kind of plummeted back down. So the long and short of it is that Neo, at least at face value, seems to be a more efficient and faster way of executing smart contracts than Ethereum.
Yeah, do you think this is going to be an Ethereum killer? What are your thoughts on that? Does it need to kill Ethereum?
I don't think it needs to kill Ethereum. I'm the more research I did into Neo. I mean, look, full disclosure, I'm an early Neo backer. I bought some back when it was still Ant shares, and I bought more once it became Neo. I've really liked what's coming out of them, and there's been a lot of different views on what they're doing.
You could have told me when you bought it.
Sorry, mate. There's just too many.
Just because I'm not even on the train. I'm just learning about this train.
It was just another thing back then. But the marketing was one thing that really got me. I think they present a really good product, and they seem to be very focused on presenting a good product. And they have a lot of backing, and that backing seems to be a little bit more unified than the Ethereum backing. Mm-hmm. The Ethereum network, and because it's distributed, I think that's why it's a bit more fractured, and there's different parts doing all sorts of different things. Neo seems a little bit more together, I guess, and that might be the China effect as well. But I really like a lot of what they're doing, and I like how they are being quite realistic with a lot of their choices, and they seem to be encouraging as many people as possible to get on this platform, and they seem to be making some really smart design decisions, which encourages me. And look, the reality is that the platforms that make it easiest for governments to implement are also going to be the platforms that make themselves the most attractive to enterprise in a lot of ways, because a lot of enterprise is government facing, or at least has to incorporate some elements of what governments do. If you can get a product to a state that where you can say, look, here it is. We've already got a whole bunch of things that will make your life easier right now.
Mm-hmm.
We've already done this in China. We can do it somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot more attractive to a government than coming to them and saying, look, there's this blockchain thing, but we're really going to have to build. We're really going to have to build a lot of stuff to make this work. And if you can get that government adoption, that state adoption, then I think a lot of businesses are just going to have to follow by necessity. The company on-chain, which is pretty connected to Neo, they've got a lot of things going on. They were the first Chinese blockchain company to join Hyperledger, which is one of the big collaboration projects which works towards essentially using blockchain in businesses. They've been working on Legal Chain, which is essentially an initiative in Microsoft China, and they want to digitize and secure signatures using blockchain technology. They've worked with the Japanese Ministry of Economy.
Nice.
They were voted as KPMG's top 50 one of the KPMG's top 50 fintech companies in China. They've got a partnership with Alibaba, and that should prick up some ears. And they've got a lot of collaboration with Chinese government as well, and they've got a lot of investment behind them too, like a lot of Chinese investment. And that China is making a huge play right now, like a huge play to re-establish the Silk Road, which is like this ancient trading network throughout the whole of Asia and Europe and other places. And there's going to be a lot of transport involved in that. There's going to be a lot of connectivity needed in that. And if you are any country along that Silk Road and you are integrating Chinese infrastructure, the blockchain that the Chinese government use and the Chinese companies use to do all the work on that thing will make the most sense for you to also get on as well.
So it'd be silly to totally ignore this project.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Keen.
So check Neo out. We'll put some links in the show notes. It's something I'm quite interested in. I need to do more research myself. I've been watching it from the sidelines for a while, but I'd really love to dig in and see how a lot of the practical stuff works. And I'll report back once I have. But it
does look absolutely fascinating, and especially the bit about developers, because it's making it easy to work with. Just sounds like a dream.
Now, look, there's a lot of stuff we haven't touched on as well, so definitely do your own research. Have a look into it. There's a lot to it. I didn't actually realize that the ecosystem for Neo was as far along as it was, but I think it's something that you really need to be aware of. If you're interested in where this space is going and what may be big in the future, Neo is definitely one that you should be looking at.
We lost touch with Jordan after last episode. Now, I reckon we should just give it a few more days and then actually get in touch with him.
He has a way of popping back up.
He's like a boomerang, isn't he?
He is, yeah. He'll show up. Surely he'll show up.
He always shows up.
That can't be the last we've seen of Jordan.
Yeah. As much as we don't want to, he always appears again. Hey, well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. If you know somebody who might enjoy the show, please feel welcome to share it with them. Why not?
You can find us at FOMO.show, and you can jump on our Slack channel, which is a kind of like our chat room at FOMO.show/Slack.
You can follow us on Twitter at _FOMO_show.
You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/TheFOMOShow.
And YouTube at FOMO.show/YouTube.
And you can also subscribe to The FOMO Show in your podcast app of choice, or alternatively on YouTube, and that'll let you know whenever a new episode comes out. So please do hit subscribe. Well, that's it for us here at The FOMO Show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
And as always, remember,
no FOMO.
Yeah. Check. Yeah.
Czech Republic.
Yeah.
I'm just putting you on lists here, don't worry.
Yeah, I don't even have my VPN on. I don't have a life outside the blockchain, mate. That's literally all I do.
It's a fair point. Wouldn't it be so bad, right? if blockchain was like Betamax and we've just ridden this freaking Betamax.
Every year, more than 5 million Americans are struck with a sickness. A terrible sickness. Something we still don't have a cure for. It's called FOMO. Well, I was... Sorry, I'm just getting really emotional about this, but I was just a normal guy, just going through life, and then I read an article about Bitcoin, and from then on, it must have been, well, a couple of months, and at first it started with small amounts, like $10, $20 here or there, but sooner or later I was selling my pickup truck and mortgaging my house. My wife had to get a job. I started getting my kids to build a lemonade stand outside, and I was spending it all. I was on top of the world. I was trading and riding futures and shorting everything, and then, well, the FOMO just really got a hold of me, and I went all in. I thought I could just keep making it. And then the winter hit. The market crashed. I lost it all, man.